Thank you very much, sir. And it is my pleasure to be with you this morning. As earlier on, as you indicated earlier, I'm an executive director with Ernst & Young, covering countries Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi, working as a cluster. So I lead the digital team, and today I'm excited to be talking to you about a topical subject around governance. I'll be quick and to the point. I'd prepared a presentation, and I'm seeing that I cannot share with you, so I'll quickly go through it, and hopefully we'll be able to share with you the presentation afterwards. I think what is very important is for us to appreciate that we are operating in a very interesting time indeed, especially in our case where it's a global phenomenon dealing with a pandemic like COVID-19. And COVID-19 is not just affecting the ICT sector, but it's a threat to business, and most importantly is a threat to the most important asset that any organization can have, its people. So on the back of that, I think this pandemic has actually given the opportunity for organizations to relook at their ICT setup, their ICT infrastructure, so that they can maintain a presence even at a difficult time like this. We all agree that any organization that has got a digital presence at this moment is making, for lack of a better phrase, a killing, because they are continuously in the face of the customers, and the customers are actually going to them. So without much further ado, I think I just need to set the context. Looking at the Zimbabwe Code of Governance, the role of directors is clearly spelled out in as far as ICT is concerned. I'll look at there are two items that I will specifically quote, and then the other items will be predominantly supporting those. Item 282 within the corporate code of governance says the board should be responsible for the governance of the company's information communication technology. Very clear. There is no ambiguity there. The role, the responsibility is put right into the face of the board. Item 232 to 284 to 286, they make reference to the security of that particular information. So security is also a responsibility that has been put on the board. Item 287 for me helps us understand or brings into context the digital aspect, because it reads the board should provide leadership and direction to ensure that the company information communication technology, ICT, achieves, sustains, and enhances the company's strategic objectives. So now it then links the ICT environment to the company's strategic objectives. And then item 288 to 290 emphasizes and complements 287. So that we can take care of any questions around what is digital, how different is it from ICT. I think there's a few things that we need to think about. Just to take a reflection, digital disruption has demolished 52% of the Fortune 500 companies since 2000. That is there in the domain. We are yet to talk about what has it done to Zimbabwe. Maybe at the moment, we still have companies that are top companies that are safe. But looking at the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange and the movements that have happened in the past few weeks, you can see that organizations that have got a digital presence are making their presence felt. Most recently, Cassava took over being the blue chip, the most valued entity on the ZSE. Is that a signal? If you ask me, it is. All businesses in public and private sector will need to become digital organizations to maintain a competitive and win in the future customer-led market. Customers are becoming more and more the reason why business has to continue. And when you look at the outlook of a customer. The customer is continuously changing, and there is a great digital influence, especially with the coming up of the millennials. There's a great digital influence on the customer, which then forces organizations to rethink and say, how do we as an organization meet the needs of a customer? That's for me the reason, more important reason why the code of governance has put that responsibility on the board. It's important for organizations to master digital and while they're doing that, be able to manage the ever-changing demands of the customer, of the employee, and also appreciate the investment that the organization has already made, be it in technology or in other infrastructure. So, what are organizations facing? Organizations are facing an empowered customer, a customer who's demanding hyperconnectivity, a customer who's making more decisions that are data-driven, a customer that is seeking that experience that will separate them from the next customer. You're looking at a customer that is existing in the context of an ecosystem. So it's no longer about the customer standing on their own. It's a customer within an ecosystem. Why is this all important? It's very important because all businesses exist for the purposes of meeting the needs of a customer. And unless and until we track the customer, it will be very difficult for organizations to keep up with the pace or the demands of the customer. That then presents the risk of an organization being disrupted. Now, how do boards help organizations achieve that ability to track the customer, that ability to meet the needs of the current and future customer? Very interesting and exciting is the customer of today, especially in the context of the crisis that we are facing. We are facing a customer who still needs to be served the same way they were served before the crisis. Customer is looking for that organization that will either serve them at the same level as before the crisis, or someone who's going to enhance their experience. So it's definitely an opportunity for us, for organizations to relook and say, how do we capitalize this particular opportunity? And now the question is, as boards, what is it that we need to do? First thing that we need to ensure is there is a digital strategy in place. As the board, we have been trusted, as board members, we've been trusted by shareholders to take care of their business or to take care of the business. And when management looks at us as the board, they are looking for leadership. They are looking for inspiration. So now and we are saying, now let's take the digital strategy that is in place. And as the board, let's review, what does it mean, or what is it that we need to do? First thing that we need to look at is to ensure that there is alignment of business strategy. The digital strategy aligns to the business. The digital strategy aligns to the business strategy. The customer experience component is well taken care of in terms of what is the direction the customer is taking? What are the experiences that the customer will get from our digital strategy? Innovation, products, how are we innovating around products? How much are we spending in that space? And what is the expected return? One thing that we highlight, that most organizations will have been saying to us is, wait a minute, we've invested so much, but we are not getting a return. It's because we have invested either in a project that we had not done a thorough study, business case on. It's very important to do a business case, but at the same time, make sure that you build in the right agility. Talent, you have to get the right people. It's important. Today, we've got the remote working concept. I wonder how many organizations have got staff that are struggling to work remotely because they are not comfortable with technology. It's now time that we ensure that our teams, our organizations are warm towards the idea of technology. We build new skills around technology and empower our people. Emergent business models. The big digital strategy has to talk to emergent business models. We need to be very clear in terms of where we are going and how we will serve our customers into the future using the digital platforms. Why digital platforms? Most of you would agree with me that this is definitely one of the cheapest ways of connecting and reaching out to the clients. It also expands your market beyond your geographical location. It's very important to also think about emergent technologies. There's so much coming our way, and it's very important that we keep pace. Big data. Today, as boards, you will appreciate that data always tells you a story. That's one of the reasons why when auditors present the financial statements, you are keen to hear, because the data that they would have looked at will be telling a story. But now we are saying that data can tell you much more than the numbers. So it's about how do we harness the big data technology towards building a resilience around our business. We've got robotics, process automation, or intelligent automation that is coming. It's very important for organizations to be aware of that. Then the next point that the digital strategy needs to cover is digital ecosystems. What are the ecosystems around or that your organization is part of? Who are the key players? What is the direction that they are taking? You know, it's very important that we have got traditional business partners that we have had. I'll call them the status quo. They keep the engines running. But it's also important to be on the lookout for those that are emerging, those that are embracing the future much faster than probably their competitors. It's very important for us to keep close to them. And our digital strategy has to talk to that, because they are serving the customer of the future, and we want our business to be relevant in the future. So some of the questions that that as board you should be asking, because they then align with your responsibility of owning and having oversight over the digital strategy of the business and the business strategy overall. One of them could be, has the executive management defined a vision and strategy for digital, and is there alignment with business objectives? So it's very important. The digital strategy has to talk to the business objectives, because that's how we will want to achieve the business objectives. Is the level of digital maturity recognized, and are plans in place to increase maturity? Very key. It's very important that organizations increase their level of maturity in the digital space, because of the ever-changing demands of technology, or ever-changing demands of the customer. So we need to match those two continuously. How often does the board committee receive digital briefings? The reason, as you can see, we are moving away from saying ICT briefings. We're saying digital, because digital is saying, how is ICT answering to my business? So there is that perspective that has to always be in the forefront. How does the board stay informed on digital risk? What is the risk appetite of the organization? I'm cognizant of time, so I'll just highlight on the key points that I have left. Is cyber due diligence part of the work that we do? How are we managing the due diligence of third parties and digital business partners? Security is key, especially at this time where most people are jumping onto the digital space. Just probably as a teaser, most people would say mobile money is a threat to the banking industry, or wanted to kill the business industry. But my point is no, it was lack of access to business, to banking services, to majority. So it's about answering the needs of the customer. And probably one key thing that we need to have in mind is that we need to be customer centric, even as we look at our digital strategy. Move away from no to how. Boards are known or have a reputation of saying no to initiatives. But I think it's time we shift away from the no to the how. How do we create value from your initiative or the initiative that you're proposing? Balance between what's human and what's automated. understand that data is the engine and trust is the lubricant. I think as a parting point, I think it's important for us to understand that technology itself is not the real disruptor. Not being customer-centric is the biggest threat to any business. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Newton. At this moment, I would want to ask the next panelist, Lovemore, to come through in the short time that you have. Lovemore, maybe can you come through? Thank you. Lovemore?
Sorry, I was on mute. I wanted to see if the hosts can allow screen sharing. I'd like to please share my screen. Very good morning, everybody. Thanks, Newton. Please just allow me to share my screen. If the host can allow me to share my screen, please.
Okay, we'll do that. Let me just ask them to do that right away. Please, can you put them on sorted?
In fact, Michael should stop sharing his screen so that I'm also able to share my screen.
Michael.
Right. I think while they're sorting that out, once again, a very good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be on this platform today. Digital is really changing the way we look at life, it's changing the way we live, it's changing the way we work, it's changing the way we look at the world in so many ways. Right now, as we are here today, as you know, the biggest transport company in the world today actually does not own any cars. It's Uber. The biggest hotel group in the world today does not own any hotels. It's actually Airbnb. So it tells us that digital is transforming the way we do business, the way we do life in a very dramatic way. And it's clear that it is a strategic imperative for every single business to start to think about how do we become digital. This is not a tick box exercise, but it's something that must really be at the core of how businesses go about doing this. And I'm glad today we are talking to business leaders, key policymakers in industry, who should know how to create an enabling environment so that we can take advantage of digital. I think I'm able to share my screen now. Thank you very much. I'm gonna just quickly share my screen there. I'm hoping that you all can see my screen. And I want to talk about, some of the things that are critical, particularly as we talk about digital transformation. And I'll quickly talk about when you're thinking of a digital journey, what sort of thinking goes into how you come up with your mission, the context of what's driving business, as well as the kind of business models that you need to come up with. And that really talks to, the context. Why are we changing? Why, digital transformation? Why do we have to follow a digital journey? Newton earlier on alluded to the fact that as we are sitting here today, the biggest company in the country a few days ago was actually Cassava Smart Tech. And in the world as well today, the biggest business in the world is listed on NASDAQ. It's actually, it's Amazon, which is now the biggest business in the world, as well as the billions that Jeff Bezos has just added to his wealth over the last few days. You also think about the 100,000 jobs that Amazon has created over just the last 4 weeks of, over the last 4 weeks when we had COVID crisis. So it shows the power of digital to dramatically change. I always say that digital is an accelerator in the sense that it helps us to do things much faster than we'll be able to do, if there was no digital. It's also an enabler in that it enables us to also do things that otherwise would not be possible if there wasn't digital. And I'll talk about that in a second. But just to summarize my thinking around digital, so digital is an accelerator. It helps us to do things much faster. And it's also an enabler. I want to quickly just talk about, clean city, and I hope you all can see the picture there. If people who are online can please mute, it's a bit distractive. These are some of the challenges that digital offers, because sometimes people are working from home and there are disruptions. So if people can please mute if you're not talking, to allow us not to be distracted. But I just want you to see the picture that you see there, and I'm hoping you all can see it. A year ago on the left, in the first frame, that was VAYA delivering water in the cyclone zone in Chimanimani. At that time, we didn't even have any assets. And all we could do was to mobilize the tractors and say, please, where's the tractor? Here's a water bowser, we are ready to deliver water. And we started to deliver water. This is exactly in May last year, 2019. But on the right frame, I want you to see that track over there. Clean City actually doesn't own that track. That track is owned by somebody else. But what we then did is we created a digital platform. And we say, look, if you have got your track, bring it on our platform so that other people can start to use it on demand to deliver water. So today, Clean City is obviously on course to become the biggest water company in the country, but we actually do not own any water bowsers or any water delivery trucks. But this is the power of digital. In the last few weeks alone, we've delivered over 5 million liters of water to vulnerable communities. Again, we are not using our own assets, but we are using the digital platform that we have to deliver that water. I just thought to start by sharing that example of the power of digital, of how, through digital platforms, we can dramatically change the way of life. But again, we can create value for everyone within the ecosystem. And I'll talk to that just now as well. And what are the things that are driving the transformation that we see around digital? I know Newton had a different take on this and started to talk about it, but I want to talk about the 3 key things that are at the center of driving digital transformation in the world today. I want to talk about the type of customers that we have today. We've got the millennials, we've got the Z generation, we've got the X generation, and most of them, they are looking for mix and match. They want to be able to pick and choose what they want. They want simplicity, they want convenience, they want convergence, they want self-service, they want to use apps. This is what is driving digital transformation at the core of it. The kind of customer is no longer the same customer that we used to have long back. So this is an imperative for most organizations to start to think of who are we serving, who is the kind of customer that we are looking for. Customers are looking for intuitive platforms. They are looking for immersive platforms, where they become part of the experience of shopping. So the customer is changing, the customer is more choosy, the customer is more picky, and the customer wants it to do on the go. But let's look on the technology side. That's another pillar. Technology side, there is cloudification. Everything is now in the cloud. Right now, as we are talking, we are actually leveraging cloud platforms. There is softwareization. Everything is now driven by software. There is virtualization. Everything is now virtual. That is why today we've got the virtual meeting that we've got here. Everything is modular, scalable. This is what's happening on the technology side. There is a convergence of technologies. So you find that most of the technologies are now coming together. Again, this challenges us to think differently. This challenges us to have a different perspective to how we approach things. But all this, the customer and the technology, has a bearing on the kind of business models that we must come up with. We need interoperability. We need also to have open platforms. The businesses that will survive are not businesses that are exclusive, but businesses that drive inclusivity, businesses that are ecosystem driven, businesses that think about, let's all eat together, let's all grow together, let's all bring everybody on board so that everybody starts to benefit. So these are some of the imperatives that are driving digital transformation at the moment. So we need to give some thinking to who is our customer, what are they looking for, what are the technologies that are available now, and what sort of business models should we come up with for us, to survive in this environment. And I want to talk very quickly about how you also realize that there's need for collaboration. I spoke about ecosystem driven. I spoke about inclusivity. And I want to talk about, the advent of concentric circles. When you start to think of our business models, we need to start to think of having at the center the customer, and around that center, you've got your digital enablers that enable for you to serve your customers. Then growth doesn't actually come from our traditional customer segments, but growth must now start to come from communities. And this is what digital is enabling. So we got to think about how farmers grow as a whole community, how health grow as a whole community, education, youth, entrepreneurs. And that is why when you see business strategies of companies like Smart Tech, they are basically following concentric circles, a model, because they've got agri-tech, which is focusing on customers. They've got health tech, which is focusing on the health side. They've got, edutech, which is focusing on education. But I want to briefly just quickly talk about, in the previous slide, let me just go one back. Okay, I want to quickly talk about four key things in closing. So the customer journey is obviously changing, and it's important that we start to think about how that customer journey is changing, and it's now a digital customer journey. We got to start to think of how do we service customers in a digital era and enable the customer to walk a digital journey from end to end. Then secondly, what sort of technologies should we be talking about? What sort of technologies do we need to invest in? Obviously taking into consideration the issues of security, the issues of risk, we know that a few weeks back, Boris Johnson was on Zoom, and when he was showing his Zoom on TV, he obviously gave away his Zoom ID. So those are some of the considerations when it comes, to using technology, the issue of security, and ensuring that, the platforms that we have got are secure. Then, of course, we need to start to think about digital services that we build even upon our existing services. But in doing so, we need to be transforming, the whole customer journey. Then, of course, our whole operations need to start to talk to the issue of digital transformation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Newton. Thank you, Lovemore. I really appreciate that. May we like Engineer Mutisi to come in, please? Engineer Mutisi, you are on mute. Engineer Mutisi, you are on mute.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Proceed.
Thank you.
You do have a few minutes, sir.
I gather that, right. Thanks very much for inviting me to participate in this. Look, ICT is what Zimbabwe needs at the moment. you know, sometimes we look at what has happened around the world with regret and say it's a negative thing, but the positivity that has come out of it is to force all institutions around the world, including our own institutions in Zimbabwe, to adopt ICT. The question that is mostly asked is, what is ICT governance? ICT governance is when you combine the ICT strategy with the business strategy. That's where ICT governance comes into play. Previously, if you look at majority of boards, I think if I look back, institutions that have got either chief technology officers or chief information officers on their boards are mostly mobile operators, MNOs. And this should be a strategy that the government should adopt. All government institutions, all companies, all organizations now need a chief technology officer or chief information officer on their boards, because that's an individual that can communicate and convey ICT strategy to that respective board. Considering that I've been told that I've got very limited time. You see, I'm just going to look at, I know Lovemore looked at companies in general, but I'm going to look at probably our passport office. Imagine with social distancing in place now, how is one supposed to go and apply for a passport? There is now a need to actually have all the passport application process to be based online. I mean, there is no reason for one to be queuing up in the passport office and end up testing positive for COVID. So there's got to be a strategy within our Registrar General's office, in terms of adopting ICTs, whereby a person has to apply from home, and when they've applied from home, introduce checks and balances. We've got our ZICT. Our ZICT has got our biometric system, or has got a biometric system already. That means they've got our biometric data, and links the two, and be automatically able to identify an individual, basing it on their biometrics or basing it on the information that they've provided. Therefore, they will stop all the corruption or any corruption that will take place. So if you look at just those basic things, I mean, this is where ICT governance has to come into place. I've looked at one, and I've looked at the Registrar General. The entire Registrar General process can actually be online without a single individual going to visit the passport office. We can go on to CVR. Well, most of our cars are imported. We don't manufacture any cars at the moment, even assemble, or we have started assembling Chinese cars at the moment. That means every car that comes into Zimbabwe goes through an ICT process. And there's also a need within the Ministry of Transport to introduce IT solutions within those institutions, so that people don't necessarily have to queue for days at the border, and remove all human interactions that are taking place at the border post. So when you look at all these solutions that I've presented at the moment, you realize that there's a need to have a chief technology officer or a chief information officer at each and every board level within institutions. I think that's my contribution at the moment, consider that we've got limited time. Thank you. You're on mute, Mr. Stanley.
Thank you all. Thank you for those who've just contributed. Thank you for that valuable input and comments. I would want for this time, we do acknowledge that we may not have everybody able to ask their questions, but we would want you to still proceed and send us through the chat or through email on the emails that you see on the chat, and then we can pick it up from there. This is not going to be the first and last. There will be many other interactions which we will be having going forward. So, but at this moment, is there anybody with a burning question? Maybe one or two we can take so that the panelists can address.
Hello, Mr. Obe.
Yes, ma'am, come through.
Yes, I think just to acknowledge this very good initiative. And I think we need to be going deeper into conversations like this, because I know we don't have time on our side, and we will not be able to do justice to this very critical topic. My sense is that possibly if you could come up with a schedule that addresses many of the aspects that are not happening today. Because I think ICT has generally in most organizations been looked at as more from an instrumental dimension rather than it, or maybe an operative dimension rather than a strategic aspect. I want to acknowledge and appreciate all the comments that were made. And I do feel that we need to continue having this discussion. For organizations will only be able to stand if we have ICT in the right place. And the role of ICT governance is going to be critical, because it's the bedrock of most developments, most strategic developments in organizations. If you listen to like what maybe all panelists, what they were indicating clearly shows that without technology, any company is likely not to be able to achieve what is expected of it. I also do feel that there's the issue of Industry 4 on our, likely to put excessive pressure on Zimbabwe as a nation. I also do feel that we will need to discuss issues of interdependencies. When Mr. Nyatsine was contributing, he spoke about issues of ecosystem, issues of collaborating. I do not think Zimbabwe is adequately collaborative minded. And in fact, personal sentiment is, I do think where we are requires that HR plays a critical role, mainly in the issue that organizations require massive culture transformation. Because ultimately when ICT solutions come, or digital transformation is going to come into organizations, the first aspect is those that are going to use it. I think most panelists talked about the importance of the customer, but the other very critical player in this game is the employee. Their readiness to embrace these technologies is what will make it work. Their readiness to accept what technology is going to impose on them. And mind you, it means we are going into a vicious change cycle, and we do know that human beings, what they do best is to resist change as much as possible, because it's it will be tampering with their comfort zones. So in my thinking, my contribution is not very structured, but I just felt that I would throw some of the things that I do feel that are important for us to talk about, maybe as we'll be going forward. I would also request that possibly if we had a schedule that was communicated early enough so that when we come and participate in these discussions, we come prepared. I got my notice maybe just about 11 o'clock. I think it was sent out this morning, but I'm not really complaining. I am celebrating that we've started, and I think it's a great initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. In fact, there are many questions that are coming through right now, and I'll just read some so that you appreciate that, as you have rightly said it, there's much we cannot exhaust in this particular meeting. For instance, there was a mention of government institutions. Do we have the representation from these institutions? And what if IODZ role in making sure or engaging the government and start making these conversations? The other question relates to the types of conversation, the issue of the best digital strategies, the issues of capacity. One way of looking at it, as you rightly put it, is to look at the question of saying we currently have physical value chains, and which means we are now supposed to move to the virtual value chain. I would want to propose that one of the things to interrogate now is to say, how do we move each item from that physical value chain to the virtual value chain? Because what that will do is it will start speaking to those issues of the infrastructure, the issues of the human resources, all the support activities, impacting on the primary activities. So at that point, it will bring to attention, even on the HR side, to be saying who are the people that are playing in the different aspects. So at this moment, I would want probably for us to have another question, but I would just say we do have a challenge in our hands, which I'm sure as we have all gathered today, this morning, we can see that there is more interactions that will be required. So as I already will make sure that in the next, as we go along almost every week, we'll have deliberations either following up on this or on other items that we have noted as well, which are needing interaction. So outside of this particular meeting, we'll be needing to be having these interactions as is coming through very clearly from all comments and the questions that we are seeing. We are really seeing that we need to be unpacking and coming up with strategies in terms of actually communication strategy, again, on these aspects. Thank you. Is there any other quick question which we can take right now? And can the panelists please respond in the last few minutes that we have?
Can I?
Yes.
Through you, moderator. Right, it's quite interesting. I mean, I've looked at some of the questions that have actually come through, and I think between Newton, Lovemore, and myself, there's been a request by, I think, Mr. Chandwana, requesting to say, what are the solutions that you can provide to businesses at this particular point in time? Which I think that's why some of the people here have requested for. I mean, Zoom is a typical solution. Look at it. We are having a meeting, online. We also look at the payment platforms. There's no reason for you to go to the bank anymore. You can now do online banking. You know, you can. The only time you have to go to the bank is when you need to collect cash. I mean, online selling, Ownai, if Lovemore can help me, I think that's the one, where you can now sell your items and advertise your property that is for sale. Those are some of the solutions. I mean, whatever you sell now, you can actually sell online and make sure that you've got a payment platform where people can actually pay. Those are some of the basic solutions to the challenges. I think one thing that Marcy, I think, raised, which was crucial, and which I saw, the question was, is the government ready for digital transformation? I think one thing that is crucial, if you look in the Western world, and if you look at the government institutions that have been digitalized, one powerful thing is they have a central database. What that means is they either have a social security number or a national insurance number, which is used to identify an individual, and that becomes your identity for the rest of your life. In our case in Zimbabwe, you can see that there is no link between our National Social Security Agency, and there is no link between the Registrar General's office. And that provides great opportunities for criminals to exploit. There is no link between the Registrar General's office and our banking system. And now there is a need to do that so that a person does not need to go to the bank to be identified who he is, or for him to provide a picture. That can be identified by the information that they provide. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that solutions are there, and now it's our opportunity to educate the business community and our government to adopt those respective solutions. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you for that contribution.
I stand is Tish here.
Carry on, Tish.
Hi. I just want to. I think the elephant in the room is funding, is capital. You got a lot of. I think a lot of senior board members might not be aware of the significance of if the IT, infrastructure falls down. So I think there's an education part where us as CEOs and MDs and all the other guys need to be educated, to set aside funding, to make sure that IT is on top of the IT funding is on top of the agenda when board members meet or when they do budgets and all the other things. But that is what is happening. You find that what Jacob was just was talking about, that there's no link into the banking, there's no link into that. It's what I find is in Zimbabwe is that we are individualistic. Most of we are doing a lot of work at individual company basis or at individual basis, but there's no the key is funding, and also the key is collaboration, which I think by education and also giving more examples of where things have gone wrong, or where things have worked in or case studies and all that will really help. That's what I think.
Thank you, Teach. That's important. You're bringing a very important point there, funding. But this is where, again, the issues of responsibility, accountability comes in, and sustainability. Because it's now an issue of also sustainability, where you are saying if leaders, directors are not going to factor this in their processes, there will be a challenge in terms of delivery to the customer and to meeting their strategic goals. Maybe Newton, you want to come through on that as well?
Yes. I think I've also been going through the questions, quite interesting and very probing the right answers. I think it's very important for organizations to assess their readiness. I think sometimes we beat ourselves a lot as if we've not done much. It's because we have not assessed what we have done. So there are tools that you can use for around digital readiness, which a service that most of these consulting firms will give you. But I think what is also critically important is to understand that at the center of a digital strategy is the human aspect, both customer and employee. It's important for us to consider those two aspects. Why? Because you can have the best of ICT equipment. If it's not used by the staff, if it's not used by the customer, it's worthless. So it's very important to have the people at the center of it. I like the idea of ecosystems. I muted on it. Mr. Nyatsine touched on it as well. It's very important for businesses to build ecosystems and build resilience around those ecosystems. The idea of going it alone it belongs to in the past. If you go alone, you won't go far. But if you go together, you go far. Yes, I know it also means it talks around finance as well. Capital is highlighted by the last speaker. It's very important. Coming in of capital, to some extent, it will be loss of control, but it's better to own 100%, 10% of a running horse than 100% of a dead horse. So you need to get to that point where you really need to find the right partner, bring them into your ecosystem, cede some control, gain some control here and there, and proceed. It's very important in the digital age. Thank you.
Thank you, Newton. Lovemore, you want to add anything on this before we round up, because our time is running out? Lovemore?
Sure, thank you very much. I think there was also a hand from Victoria there. You're raising your hand, right?
Yes. Okay. Sorry, maybe before you come in, maybe Victoria, can you come in?
All right, thank you very much for the platform. Just my contribution is that I've been working in ICT for about 5 years now. And from experience, it's actually not a costly investment. I think the issue that we are dealing with, first of all, is that of education. Because the moment you try to talk about IT stuff, people just black out. I mean, studies show that you have what we call digital immigrants. They have no idea what you're talking about. Even if you try to explain they already had their arms up in defense. So I think the starting point really is to define what it is that we want to achieve. And then you find ways and means of educating. We find ways and means of educating ourselves. But most of the time, it's really not a costly investment. It's something that you find that people in their 20s and 30s can do for your organizations.
Thank you, Victoria. That's important. That brings an important dimension there. Maybe Lovemore?
Sure, thank you very much, Victoria, for that point. I was not going to talk about digital immigrants, but I was going to talk about digital natives. Every single one of us now need to become digital natives, and it doesn't matter what you even studied. For example, I studied sociology, but I'm running 3 businesses that are basically digital platforms, because the challenges we have today is that we all have to become digital natives. But I want to park that point for a moment. What I wanted to say was that what's critical is that what is the new normal now? The new normal is that for the foreseeable future, we're not going to get a coronavirus vaccine anytime soon. We need to be aware of that. And because we're not going to get coronavirus vaccine soon, it means we'll continue for the foreseeable future with restrictions, lockdowns, and the kind of way things are starting to work now. So for example, some businesses need to understand that some people might have to continue to work from home forever. What coronavirus has exposed is that there are certain businesses that are going to be winners, but there are also certain businesses that are going to be losers. It's a fact. Some businesses are going to die, but some businesses are actually going to be born because of this crisis. And what's important is businesses need to develop new capabilities, and those are digital capabilities. It starts from the way businesses are looking at their strategy, the way they are looking at their customer, the way they are even recruiting, the kind of staff that work in this kind of environment. We got to understand that we will no longer be looking at skills the way we used to recruit before COVID, for example. And I think the beauty about coronavirus or COVID is that we have to look at it as an opportunity, and we must not waste this good crisis. We must use it as a good crisis. Let's not waste this crisis in the sense that it's accelerating digital adoption. And what it means is we all have to put in place measures at an organization level to accelerate digital adoption, because if we don't do that, other businesses will die. So we need to re-educate, to de-skill our employees and upskill them for a digital age. We need to change our operations and optimize them for a digital age. And like other speakers said, investment in digital or ICT is actually not a cost. We got to look at it as an investment, and we have to ask ourselves, what is the cost of not investing? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Labu. Because of our time, I just want to make certain, from what I'm hearing, there will be need definitely for us to be following through. And we would want to confirm that definitely we will follow through on this webinar, especially all the questions that may be coming through. There are already points of discussion, and when we follow through, we'll be able to have somewhere where we are starting from. And also for those who may also be interested on aspect of business resilience, I would just want to also mention that same time next week, Ensign Young will have a network of on business resilience, and that link will be shared as well on the platforms. But for now, I would want to probably, for those who may, in case we get cut off because of time, I would want to still, for us, those who are able to carry on with the discussion, we carry on until our time is up. But the question is, we need to start definitely collaborating, definitely thinking about the challenges that we are facing. Already we have got suggestions coming through that it may not necessarily be a cost issue, but it may be a question of how we are actually, how as directors, we are actually reskilling, how are our skill set improving? And do we have representation at board level? That's something that we now will be a question to say, is there an ICT champion in each board? That's something we now need to be looking at. So it's no longer just having ICT on the side, but it's about now having clear structures that speak to this. So it's important that we look at that. Maybe we can have a few more contributions. Yes, we can definitely not exhaust everything today. We are all clear that this is something that will need continuous improvement, and we need to still work on it.
Sorry, it's Newton.
Come through, Newton.
Yeah, I think the point on the cost is pertinent. But however, I think if you go back to the presentation, I highlighted that it's important for boards to move away from no to how. I think the question is what is it, the benefit to the business, and how much the management is willing to take responsibility for the outcome. I think most of the times we look at the cost and forget that there is a revenue attached to the cost. So I think it's important for that balance, so that if the cost is huge, then probably the question shouldn't be no, or the response should be no, but how can we do it differently? Probably incremental approach as opposed to a total no. Thank you.
Thanks, Newton. Look, I thought, can I contribute through you, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
come through.
Right. You know, I was reading something, I think it's either yesterday or today, about, you know, the government decentralizing the marketplace. Msika. I don't know whether anybody saw that. And I'm thinking, Mr. Lovemore, think of the disaster that is happening in Bari now. I mean, there's got to be a solution that can be presented to the government to avoid those kind of situations where people can gather. There's got to be one. I mean, we as ICT professionals, ladies and gentlemen, because I can see a few on here, there's got to be something that we present and say there is a solution, because it obviously means the government is not consulted. And I don't remember, I don't know of any single ICT consultant that the government works with. I think there's got to be, through you, Executive Director, for those that don't know, there's got to be a way that we engage the government when they start implementing, you know, solutions that we see can be disastrous. So, Mr. Lovemore, Mr. Newton, if there is a way that we can present something, I think it's vital, considering what has happened in Zambia and South Africa at the moment.
Thank you for that contribution. Do we have somebody with a burning contribution? While we are doing that, maybe I can just read some of the comments here. Currently, I believe this is from George. Currently, I believe most companies can connect to their office from anywhere. What needs to be done is an assessment of the current infrastructure and technology in place, and find a way to access applications and services from office while at home. So I think probably that has already been covered in a way, but it's something that I think we now have to have at the back of our mind, that this is now the new normal.
Yeah, Stan, can I contribute? His teacher.
Come through, Tish.
Yeah, I think I'd slightly disagree. I know quite a number of people here are engineers and technology guys. Coming from a business point of view, cost is a factor for me, because we have been bent before, where you try to start a project, an IT project, and then it just overruns and cost the project, changes come through, and it might be a 100K project or 50K project end up becoming a 200, 300K project. So that's why I'm saying cost is a key. Because if you talk to a lot of executives at the moment, if you ask them about IT, they'll tell you IT costs. They'll just say the costs just keep on coming. So there's no end game. I know if you look at the revenue contributing IT projects, yes, that's a different ball game altogether. But if an IT is an overhead, it's a problem for a lot of us in business.
Thanks, Teach. What that is also then speaking to is the training required for our directors. Because you see, it's a matter of, first of all, at this moment, it will be a matter of survival, but it will be also a matter of making sure that they're able to be sustainable enterprises. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think just to add on, just to add on quickly. So what we are talking about, what I'm suggesting is that the ICT world, we should come to a point where we can have shared costs. That's what I'm trying to get. Where there's education, shared costs. You've got some in America and in Europe, you've got areas where they've got shared costs where the cost is shared of, let's say, data centers and things like that. Then the cost becomes cheaper. But that is, I think, what I'm trying to push to the ICT guys to go into, to think if in their board, wherever they've got the ICT board, whatever, to start getting innovative and have these kind of arrangements. Then the cost will come down. We are an influence, in terms of, as a country, in terms of technology. We are not, we've got some technologies which are ahead of Europe and the US, but then we've got technology which is very, very, the basic technology is poor. That is where those are the points I wanted to raise as well.
Thank you very much, Teach. At this point also, I'll ask Evans, please, can you come through? Evans Kurangwa.
Well, thank you very much, IODZ, for such an excellent opportunity for us to reflect and map the way forward and address issues that are around us. I just wanted to take you back, Executive Director, to I think one of the key areas in which we're defining our problem, which has to do with defining, whose agenda is it? Possibly, if possibly it's a question to the panelists, I'm trying to think here, can you possibly structure questions, sectors on areas in which who does what and who does what? I'm thinking of it, for example, to do with HR. Is the now tool of the trade. You think that just
sorry, Mr. Kurangwa. Sorry, Mr. Kurangwa, your line is not quite clear.
Become part of
Sorry, Mr. Kurangwa, we were not able to hear you clearly. I just heard the first part, but the rest was not quite clear. I don't know if it was just for me, but it might be for everybody else.
Maybe you can type, moderator. Maybe you can type. You can please type.
Hello? Okay.
Maybe
sorry, can you come through, Masi?
Okay. I just wanted to comment on the submissions that were made by Chireka.
Yes.
I think he raises a very critical aspect, which I think does ICT a disservice. Projects that start and then don't go too well. My contribution to that is it's a factor of the quality of the project, which I think we need to pay particular attention to. Because projects are critical as they are the vehicles through which strategies are executed. So I do think as part of our conversations, we also want to most probably address the issue of project management and how it impacts the work of boards. Because ultimately, if there's a weakness there, we are going to have brilliant strategies formulated, but executed purely if the aspect of the project management is not addressed. So I want to support what he was saying and say the general experience at the moment is we are hesitant to invest adequately into ICT because those projects start and they often don't end well. But I do feel that it is because possibly we've not done enough upfront to address how, when we have formulated the strategies, how they are going to be executed with appropriate management, that is an appropriate project management governance structure that will allow success. Because ultimately, if we have not executed what we have strategized on, we really dancing on the same spot. I think that's my contribution.
Thank you. That's very, very important, because what you can see, there's also a question, as you can see from the chat side, say, what is the cost of investing in terms of data? So when you then look at that project, that might have been, I mean, just this item, this question, which is coming up, is critical. You know, the data, you know, the platforms that we are operating from, what you know, we need to be, you know, talking to each other about this. And the good thing is, even on this platform, there's diversity of skill, knowledge, capacity, everything, which we really need. So we need to be probably holding each other to account to say, how far are we with these specific challenges? So as we take note of them, I think they should be subject to all our discussions in the different fora that we find ourselves as directors, that we share these ideas and then we hold each other to account and say, how are we doing? Whether it's the interface with the government, as Engineer Mutisi was mentioning there, or the particular strategies, as Masi, as you said there, you know, and as teachers said as well on the course. So it is really speaking to the question of, are we, you know, connecting in the best way possible? And this is where we think that this is the opportunity, even as members of IOD, that we should be able to now progress this, follow up on this, and in our next discussions, be bringing up some of these topical issues to play and say, how are we progressing? And that way, I think we'll be able to have traction on these matters. Evans, I still didn't hear the rest of your submission. I would still think and request that maybe if you could still probably write it down somewhere so that we don't lose those valuable contributions. Can we probably at this moment, can I take this opportunity to thank you all? I want to first of all thank the panelists for the preparation that they've done, for bringing in contributions, you know, to probe our minds, to get us to start brainstorming, thinking, you know, putting our minds to this very important aspect. It's a survival issue, and also it's a sustainability issue for our institutions. And so as a result, I would want us to say, as I said before, that we want to commit to following up on this discussion. We will take notes of as many issues that have come up as possible, try to create the necessary fora so that this ICT governance issue progresses. Let's look at it as a project, as already has been said. It's a project that we want to then carry on working on, because it's really an issue of sustainability now. It's survival and sustainability, in my view. I want to thank you for definitely coming through. For those who are not members of IOD, just so that we are able to carry on communicating on email, please submit your emails, and also you are part of the family. We want to work together on this. We believe that it's not a one-man band issue. We've got to really work on this and make sure that it happens. It affects all of us across all sectors. So at this moment, I want to say thank you all. Thank you for coming through. We will be announcing in the next day or two the next webinars that we are going to have, and in the next few weeks, in the week or so, have another calendar of the webinars so that you are able to plan ahead. So we really want to thank you, and we've taken note of all the comments that have been mentioned. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Have a good day, and as we say, let's apply our minds to what we've been discussing. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon. Hello.
By the way, it's not very good. Say 5, 6, 0. So we are thinking.